Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're unpacking something literally unprecedented that just went down right at the bleeding edge of artificial intelligence. We are looking at a story that sits dead center at the intersection of breakthrough tech, national security, and global supply chains. So if you're building with AI, if you're investing in it, or honestly just trying to figure out where the frontier of this tech is heading, you're going to want to pay super close attention to this one.
Okay, let's dive into this. 3 days. That is exactly how long Anthropic's most powerful public models actually lasted in the wild before they were yanked completely offline. Yeah, just 3 days. We're talking about Claude Fable 5 and Mythos 5, these hugely anticipated systems that basically vanished just as quickly as they showed up.
Section 1. A 3-day frontier. The sudden shutdown. To really get how this happened, we gotta look at the inciting incident, right? A totally deliberate, sudden export control directive from the US government targeting these specific models. This wasn't some random glitch, and it wasn't a server outage. It was a lockdown. Just look at this incredibly tight timeline. Anthropic launches Fable 5 and Mythos 5 on June 9th, with Fable hyped as their most capable generally available model ever. Then, fast forward barely 3 days later to June 12th at exactly 5:21 p.m. Eastern, and the government's directive hits. By the end of that very same day, the models are disabled globally. Poof! And thanks to a massive scoop from Axios, we know that Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick sent a letter directly to Anthropic's CEO Dario Amodei. The directive completely suspended access by any foreign national anywhere in the world. And because Anthropic literally couldn't enforce that restriction on a query-by-query basis, well, they had to pull the plug for everything.
Section 2, the contested jailbreak, security versus flaw. So why did the government step in so heavily? Well, it all revolves around a contested jailbreak. And guys, we're looking at two wildly different interpretations of the exact same event here. Now, I want to be perfectly neutral about this because the contrast is really stark. On one hand, you've got the US government arguing that a credible third party completely bypassed Mythos class safeguards. Because this touches on cybersecurity, the government views a compromised frontier model as a severe national security risk, one that absolutely demands an immediate lockdown until they can do a proper review. On the flip side, Anthropic's defense is highly specific and honestly pretty deflationary. They're arguing that this is a super narrow, non-universal flaw. Essentially, it was just asking the model to read a codebase and fix its flaws. Anthropic is calling it a minor vulnerability, and they're quick to point out that other models already out there, like OpenAI's GPT 5.5, can find these exact same issues without needing any kind of bypass at all. So both sides completely agree a jailbreak exists, but they sharply disagree on whether it actually matters. So the crucial point is really this. It's a dispute about severity and proportionality, not about whether a weakness exists. Anthropic has promised they're going to share more details soon, and the government's full unredacted reasoning isn't completely public yet either. This whole situation is still developing, which means for now, all these specifics are pretty provisional.
Section 3. Compliance and open disagreement. Threading the needle.
This whole mess leaves Anthropic threading a really unusual needle. They are in full immediate legal compliance, but they're coupling that with very open, very vocal disagreement about whether this action was even necessary. Let's break down their procedural arguments against this sudden shutdown. First off, they argue that recalling a commercial model that's already been deployed to millions over what they call a minor finding is just an extreme overreaction. Second, they firmly believe government intervention should happen through a transparent statutory process. Third, they're claiming they were only given a verbal rationale, no written specifics about the actual concern. And finally, they point out that thousands of hours of prior massive red teaming, which, by the way, actually included the US government and the UK's AI Security Institute, found absolutely zero universal jailbreaks. Anthropic is basically warning us that if this standard gets applied across the board, it would effectively halt every single new frontier model release across the entire industry. Why? Because every model has some sort of non-universal vulnerability. Let's move to Section 4 and see how this builds. The backdrop, an already contentious launch. Now, none of this happened in a vacuum, right? The launch of Fable 5 was actually quite turbulent even before the government decided to step in. There were some pretty significant pre-existing issues. For starters, Anthropic introduced a really controversial 30-day data retention policy. This immediately prompted Microsoft to warn its own employees against using Fable for business data, and it effectively locked out European firms that absolutely rely on zero retention workflows. On top of that, the US government's own stance has been remarkably inconsistent here. For months, different branches of the state have been pulling in totally opposite directions. You had disputes with the Pentagon, intelligence agencies were reportedly already using the model, and all the while, the White House had previously pushed back on Anthropic's plans to widen civilian access. So really, this export control letter, it's just the hardest lever they've pulled so far in what was already a deeply fractured relationship.
Section 5. A supply chain shock. Why builders should care.
Okay, moving away from the high-level policy drama, let's talk about the immediate practical takeaways for you, the developers, the tech pros, and the business leaders watching this explainer. Guys, this is a massive supply chain shock. The government is now treating these frontier models like export-controlled tech. That means they are officially viewed as dual-use technology. Suddenly, nationality and residency are acting as gating factors right alongside your standard price and rate limits. Since the directive specifically targeted foreign persons, if your dev team or your users happen to be non-US persons, getting model access is no longer just a technical question. Nope, it is now a geopolitical procurement question. So here is your brand new strategic playbook as a builder. Step 1, you absolutely must start treating model access as a supply chain risk. As we've just seen, a frontier model can literally disappear mid-deployment by government order. Step 2, always route your access through an abstraction layer. Step 3, never hard depend on a single frontier model, especially the absolute newest one on the market. And step 4, keep a fallback model ready to go. I mean, think about it. Anyone who spent their weekend switching their entire production pipeline over to Fable 5 woke up Monday morning completely cut off with zero notice. That is literally a developer's worst nightmare. And this brilliantly illustrates the ultimate irony of our current AI landscape. The absolute safest defensive posture you can take right now, graceful degradation to the tier just beneath the frontier. In this case, that's Anthropic's Opus 4.8, which ironically remained completely unaffected by the directive. Building on the bleeding edge buys you incredible capability for sure, but it also sells you fragility. Government scrutiny naturally concentrates exactly where the capability is the highest. Section 6, the geopolitical kill switch, the structural signal. Zooming out for a second, regardless of who is ultimately right about these specific, nitty-gritty technicalities of that jailbreak, we have to look at the macrostructural signal here. We are looking at a staggering new precedent. We now know for a fact that the U.S. government will use export control authorities to execute rapid commercial model recalls. We also know that public rationales are not required for them to do so. This fundamentally reframes the most capable AI models out there as strategic control technology. This isn't just software anymore, folks. It is a controlled asset. And that has massive, far-reaching impacts on where you host your applications, which jurisdiction governs your access, and exactly how you write out your business continuity plans. I really want to leave you with this one thought. The frontier just got a kill switch. The notable part is who turned out to be holding it. And it wasn't the lab. The highest capability AI now sits squarely at the intersection of commerce and national security. The government has proven it can act in a matter of hours to just switch off access. As we move forward, how do we balance this incredible race for commercialized frontier capability with a government's claim over strategic national security? It's a very fragile future, and one we are going to be watching extremely closely. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer.